drop.
Today I kind of just want to set up the project, talk a little about the wireframe stage and how to start building this out. And then in a future episode, we'll probably more dive into more of the aesthetics and more of the actual visual side of things, as well as obviously dealing with any of the experience aspects along the way as we sort of progress through this whole process too. Dive into some of the inspiration that I pulled up here on screen, and then I'll also show you some of the other aspects that I have from colors within my inspiration board on Pinterest, other stuff from Dribbble from a visual standpoint, but also just contextually with different text that you can utilize, as well as some iconography too, to really kind of pull out those key aspects at the same time. A couple things to just call out right here on the page that we're looking at is I have sort of an artboard here that has a couple screenshots of some projects. Now, some of these could be actual projects, some of these are actually more passion projects people have made and produce and put it on Dribbble and other platforms too. But I think that's also good to just see that of how people's brain work when they're designing. You know, these three examples right off the bat really give a different perspective of how people would go about actually utilizing this in the first place. So we can kind of go and dive into each individual example, call out a few things that I personally like that we might actually utilize, and then from there we might just start to iterate some different ideas, start throwing them on a page, and then take it from there. This one in particular is really nice. A couple personal things I like from a design perspective is I like big text, I also like bold colors as well, and utilizing both of these in this example is fantastic in my opinion. I mean, you really call out the fact that power is obviously their keyword they're utilizing in here, but it also stands out with the use of the pink, really draws you in there at the same time. I think I'm really drawn to this aspect though, of kind of utilizing the bike, using the text behind it, things like that are really going to help kind of make it stand out in general. They've called out two things where they have this battery attached to the frame of the bike itself, as well as they also have an app associated with it. So this will tell you obviously speed and all the other kind of numeric values you would need, as well as the amount of power that's left on the bike itself. Next one over here, again, it's kind of obviously quite bold typography, quite bold imagery. Everything else is kind of like really stands out in this one. Aspects of this I do like. I can tell the designer of this really was focusing on more of the angles of the bike itself to incorporate into the typography. So you notice how each of the Y's, the E's, even in the supplementary text down here, really is kind of that swooping aspect to the typography in general. And I really like that. I really do like that a lot. To be perfectly honest, this text was this was very subtle text. I didn't notice this at all. And I don't think many people would have noticed there was even extra text down here. I think a couple of things in here, you kind of notice that where you have the typography nice and big, clear to the point of what they're actually trying to persuade, as well as kind of some of the other aspects of the CTA down here and your navigation too. I like the bold use of the iconography too. So we have the numbers down here, very quick to cycle between this. An interesting thing you could even do from a product standpoint is to show the bike from a 3D aspect in this case, where maybe this is separated out in some form or fashion. That could be kind of cool, especially if you're kind of talking about repairs, to sort of show off the parts of the bike. And then lastly, this visual down here, I kind of really enjoyed this one just because this one is showing what they considered a smart bike, which was usually utilizing like smart technology as well as like security inside of here to know exactly where your bike is, and obviously get all the different dynamics from turbo boost to features and whatnot inside of here, as well as obviously track the bike and even call out some of the other aspects of how that system is put in place inside of here too. And that was kind of what I was talking about in the last one, of ways that you can strip it apart to kind of get a better understanding. That's the initial three inspiration pieces I kind of pulled together. Like I said, I've got plenty more. A few other parts of this that I did pull together were some just photographs of different bikes of all different kinds. So we've got everything from more road focused bikes and more like antique bikes to mountain bikes, and even close-up shots too of the handlebars here and the actual gears itself. Just thinking about all that product side of this side of the coin, and how you can really showcase more of the bike and get more of that perspective across. You know, all these photos that I have is kind of based off of other ads people have done for bikes in the past. But I'm also trying to figure out like what colors would I want to do for this at the same time. So on my Pinterest board for a bike, I'm kind of thinking you have a mixture of more darker, richer colors, but you also have really strong like neon pop colors at the same time. I know that Specialized and several other brands right now have been really changing the way they've done that. Obviously in the past it's just been very standardized and just kind of like, you know, one block of color in some form or fashion, but now a mixture of different shades of greens and blacks and grays, and kind of like focusing more on like the aesthetic of the actual bike as well, beyond just like obviously improving the components and everything else too. Because clearly, obviously, they've been looking at their target audience themselves and trying to figure that out. You know, a couple of these obviously already draw into my mind already at the same time in terms of ones that we could actually utilize. And I might even grab these, you know, at hand and start to compile that initial list of colors. I don't really need that green anymore, and I think we just need to have a pink fashion, and then we can, that's our initial kind of color palette at the same time to kind of work with. And then for now, we'll just mess with kind of figuring out the rest of the product too. I think that it'll be fun to figure out. That shouldn't pop. Be fun to kind of figure out some more of these elements too, and start to wireframe here in a second of some of those different components and how we can actually utilize those as well. So, okay, so that's kind of the color of like. Let's say we would make 3 different bikes. That would be some of the palettes we could use. The frame could be this color, and then like the text could be that as well. I think for the next episode, I'll probably have some mock-ups of those ready, so we can actually start to plug those in place. I think what I want to do is have 2 objectives with this whole thing: is to build out a product page that just showcases one bike, for example, and then we can duplicate the format for everything else, and then also to create some type of bike shop that's going to showcase both the ability to do repairs as well as other services that they offer at the same time. You know, thinking also about the community, like having a mixture of repairs, having a shop, and then also having like local meetups too for rides for people to do together. You know, all around from road biking to mountain biking to anything in between at the same time. So we would have some type of bike. From there we can start to dive into all the other ins and outs of kind of how this page would come together at the same time. So I'm going to keep this purchase a bike flow off as a group off to the side, just so I have the context here for kind of what I'm trying to build. But what I want to do to begin with is I'm going to throw in all those building blocks to this very first one. Wonderful stuff. Wonderful stuff. Okay, so alright team, so I was editing this episode and noticed that the stream itself got out of sync as I was doing that last night and noticed that a lot of the audio clips from the video that was being displayed was entirely out of sync, entirely all messed up and everything else. So, apologies for that, and hope you guys enjoy the rest of the video. So what I was getting to here was just creating that very first wireframe from the first flow of the actual product design. I kind of started in the top left with that logo, started to talk a little bit about the monogram I was going to create and how to just utilize a simple C as we were going to create this company such as Cycle. And then from there, just to create that initial wireframe of kind of what that would be. I didn't really worry too much about, you know, the actual specs of what this was going to be. I tried a couple different fonts to sort of decide on what I would want to do inside of here, but it was pretty much deciding that this one particular one that I like, just like the way the C looked and the uniqueness of it, as well as the curves inside of it already, was an easy way for me to align that to the brand. And then once that was kind of implemented, I moved on to the next bigger portion of it, which was the navigation paradigm as well in the top right, and figuring out ways to, you know, kind of start to build out this business in general. From there, I started to think a little bit about those pages and what those pages would entail. So thinking a little bit that we would need to obviously have the products, we need to have the services, we'd also need to even have some of the messaging inside of it to be able to contact the company about either repairs or purchasing any of the bikes in general, and thinking about some of the quick ways for this. I also highlighted a little bit of easy ways to do that. So one thing I've seen in the market lately is people utilizing WhatsApp and other platforms to have easy links, quick access within the website to, you know, either send a quick text message or photo of what's going on as well. So I think that's kind of a cool way to think about that too. This next part here was really just starting to figure out the general aspect of the page. So we have the photo already in place. We started to bring in some of that text too. I use a tagline here, but one aspect of the video that is not shown, that was shown on stream, was that we actually updated this to be the actual product name afterwards. At the time, I just was starting to think more about the brand instead of the actual product that I was showing at the same time. Then from there, I just continue to keep those boxes in place of what areas I already knew. Obviously the purple, as mentioned before, was more in relation to the image that was going to be there, as well as some of the CTAs that we're going to have from a mixture of purchasing the bike as well as jumping to other sections of the page to understand a bit more about the components that are within the bike as well. And then from there, we started to talk a little bit about what other elements we could have below the main focus of the image too. So that could be component pieces. It could also be highlights of some of the data points we saw in some of the other inspiration as well. And then beyond that stuff, we started to then explore a little bit of ways that we might have wanted to incorporate some of those elements too. So you can see me here starting to mess with some of that, thinking a little bit that the components might be a good focal point to have right below the image. And then I also got slightly sidetracked and started to mess with that navigation just because I was thinking of the components all at the same time. I started to explore these items and starting to create certain boxes of those components and the explanatory text that will go below the main hero image in the page.